We often remember talented players who didn't realize themselves for various reasons. But there was one guy among them who didn't have a good reason for failing. He had everything for successful big men in the NBA. Great footwork, athleticism, rebounding skills, a soft shot, and the ability to make a subtle pass. What could have gone wrong? Hello, you are on the Chronicle of Hoops channel, and today we will talk about the career of Chris Webber and try to understand why, according to many people, he didn't fully realize his potential in the NBA. Mace Edward Christopher Webber III was born on March 1, 1973 in Detroit, in a full-fledged middle-class family, and even childhood promised great prospects for a Chris. He attended the prestigious Country Day School and led its basketball team to 3 MHSAA state championships, becoming a state star and being named Mr. Michigan Basketball. In his senior year, in 1991 season, he averaged 29.4 points and 13 rebounds per game, and was named the best player in the United States among high school students, and also became the most valuable player in the Dan All and McDonald All-Star games. Entering the University of Michigan the same year as Juwan Howard, Jalen Rose, Jimmy King and Ray Jackson, C. Webb became part of iconic Fab Five, who, head and shoulders above any competitor, behaved cocky both on and off the court. Chest pads, baggy shorts, black socks, black sneakers, the dress code of daredevils, quotes from Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X symbolize the perimetry support of the Black Rights Movement and the rejection of the established system of education for rich boys. This team didn't leave anyone indifferent. Some consider the 91-93 Wolverines to the best team in the NCAA history. Others were annoyed by the insane hype around them and their new trend for the long shorts. These people were sure that it was simply impossible to assemble such a team in an honest way. To the delight of these people, the Fab Five, who reached the March Madness finals 2 years in a row, lost both times. The first to their arch-antagonist from Duke, for whom Grant Hill and Christian Laettner played, who immediately after that was called up to the same Olympic Dream Team, for a place in which Webber competed with him to the last. And the decisive game in 1993 with North Carolina did set a huge target on the back of Chris Webber. "20 seconds before the end of the final against North Carolina, of the scoreboard -2. Michigan has no timeouts left. Chris picks up the rebound and does the traveling. The judges are silent. 18 seconds. Michigan needs that shot that will either send the game into the overtime or win the championship. 15 seconds. The notorious Rob Pelinka was free to shot on the arc. Before entering college, his high school coach predicted him the game-winning three-pointer in the championship finals. 13 seconds. Webber's partners don't understand why he does not give the ball. The Fab Five never had a problem with this. 11 seconds. Chris Webber is locked in the corner of the court by 2 defenders. Score 71-73. The final of the national championship, which is watched by millions of people. Chris Webber asked for a timeout that isn't left. Technical foul, 2 free throws, and possessions lost. There are many dark spots in this story, and there are 3 main versions of what happened. Version 1. Mistake. But few people believe that Chris Webber really miscalculated the timeouts. This is basketball player with the highest IQ, who on the court was the one who makes the decisions. In addition, it is hard to imagine that the coach of the student team, and even in such an important match, didn't remind in the previous break about the number of timeouts. And Steve Fisher, the Wolverines head coach, confirmed in the post-match press conference that he was talking about no timeouts and Chris was standing next to him. Version 2. Misunderstanding. The first person Webber will turn to after the referee writes out a technical one is Michael Tully, Michigan's guard, who was sitting near the bench behind the assistant coach, asking, "Why did you say to do this?" Moreover, Webber will repeat this twice more, no longer addressing someone personally, but asking, "Why did you tell me to do this?" The video shows that at the moment the attack began on Michigan bench, there really is a person who signals a timeout, or about what might seem like a timeout. And really, it is Tully. At the same press conference, Michael confirmed that he had signaled to Chris but with a note, no timeouts. Chris could have confused the signal, but at the press conference he would not say that timeout was asked to be taken by Tully. Version 3. Outside influence. In the conspiracy theory itself, a certain Ed Martin appears, who in 1996 became interested in law enforcement agency. It turned out to be a passionate basketball fan from Michigan who patronized some of the local players, including sponsoring them with the criminally obtained money. The investigation revealed that among these players was Chris Webber, who received $218,000 from Martin between 1988 and 1993, allegedly for pizza and gasoline. This was confirmed by Jalen Rose 19 years later. It was a normal practice. People like Martin are always in the environment of student sports program. They bribe, lure young players. Those who got into the NBA and received the first $2 or $3 million contract returned the invested funds. On April 5, 1993, the day of the Michigan-North Carolina final, 5 hours before Chris Webber's timeout, Ed Martin, according to journalists from the Detroit Free Press and Chicago Tribune, bet a large amount at Las Vegas bookmaker's office. The kind of bet to break the bank. And this could only be done by betting on Carolina. Michigan's Fab Five were unconditional favorite. Martin bets on Tar Heels. Martin wants a refund. Martin wants Chris Webber to take timeout. Then everyone decides for themselves. But according to Jalen Rose, he was waiting for the pass throughout the episode because they played like that for the 2 years in a row. There was no official accusation that Chris sold the game because he owed Martin, although each of the versions had a basis. But versions appeared later. Back then, he was simply shot. Yes, over time, this defeat will be looked at differently. A film will be made about the team, and the team's haters will be called old-timers who are not ready to keep up with the times. But Webber's entire career will be viewed under the prism of this mistake. Chris declined to participate in the making of the movie about Fab Five and the accompanying interviews. He rarely discusses the situation. According to those close to him, after the timeout, he decided to distance himself from Michigan so that everyone would think that his life began with his first year in the NBA. When Chris realized that he could no longer play in Michigan, he entered the 1993 draft. Under the first pick, he was chosen by Orlando Magic, who planned to create a dream frontcourt from Webber and Shaquille. But Shaq had other plans. In the summer of '92, while filming Blue Chips with Nick Nolte, he became friends with Anthony Hardaway, who was also one of the top picks in the draft. The Magic let their rookie leader invite Penny to work out the day before the draft. The bosses of the club literally fell in love with the 201-centimeter guard with the makings of Magic, after which they changed their strategy to the draft. Although they chose Chris Webber, he didn't even have the time to blink as he was traded to Golden State for Hardaway and 3 picks of the following drafts. Thus, the team under the leadership of Don Nelson turned out to be a big man who was maximally adapted to the Nelly ball. But Chris himself did not really want to be a part of Nelson's corporate identity and play as center at his schemes, and he had leverage. The fact is that Webber came to the league at the time when it began to give too much power to the young, a few years before club owners insisted on created rookie contracts with their salary scale. Despite the fact that Webber became Rookie of the Year and was named to the All-Rookie First Team, he didn't have a great relationship with the head coach. He threatened to get out of his contract and become a free agent. Even the signing of center Ronnie Cycli, the most progressive player of the 90s, didn't help, allowing Chris to return to his favorite power forward position. And Golden State, in fear of being left with nothing, were forced to trade C-Web to the Bullets for Tom Gugliotta and 3 first-round picks. Reunited in Washington with Fab Five partner Joan Howard, Webber found himself in a situation where he had to carry an overly young team, but he was not mentally prepared, picked up bad habits and began to be lousy about the matter. Then he completely injured his knee, missing as a result 116 games in 4 years with the Bullets. By that time, Chris was already 26 years old, and the dissatisfied management gladly accepted the offer from Sacramento, exchanging him for Mitch Richmond and Otis Thorpe. And here we turn to the most interest. It is impossible to write about Weber not in the context of that same Sacramento. It was after the exchange of Chris in California that a certain force began to emerge that could crush the entire league under itself, but eventually became a victim of basketball capitalism. The Kings of the beginning of the 21st century were a colorful collection of exceptional people capable of achieving any heights. You can talk endlessly about the culture of extra passing and fast breaks, about Jason Williams or Mike Bibby, about the eccentric Larry Divac or Peja Stojakovic, who had the height of a modern center but became one of the best shooters in the history, about Hiro Turkoglu with a painted head or crazy but useful Bobby Jackson, about Doug Christie devouring everything around him, or Gerald Wallace bored on the bench, about Rick Edelman, after all, who some other coaches have dubbed Hitler from the NBA. It was in the Kings that the term Chris Webber transfer took root, and it was here that he first encountered the love of the fans. These Kings were unlucky enough to reach their peak in an era dominated by Shaquille, Duncan and Garnett. But their story was not without deliberate influence from outside. Someone even calls it the murder of future champions. In the same infamous Game 6 of the 2002 West Final, not only Weber, but his entire team was shot. The league understood that no one was watching the East at all, and the final would be watched even less. So at least the West needed to get the 7th match out of the end. The match was getting out the beautiful Sacramento, whose game in 2002 finals remained only in our fantasies, and in the comedy How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, with Matthew McConaughey. To be fair, if you analyze what happened in that series between the overpowered Kings and the dysfunctional Lakers, you can see that everything was decided in 3 games. Game 4, when Robert Horry hit the game-winning 3 after none of the Kings took the last 2 rebounds. The 6th game in the worst refereeing of the 21st century. Game 7, when the Kings had plenty of chances to close the series, but they were already too demoralized. Weber couldn't do anything in Game 6 to help his team, except for a couple of chokes on Dick Bavetta. But he didn't dominate Game 4-7 either. This was his chance to define his career once and for all, but he failed to take it. It just didn't have that quality. Maybe he lost his confidence in big games because of that embarrassing college timeout? Or did his clowning at the Bullets prevent him from developing the qualities he needed in the clutch? Or did he initially lack the killer instinct? We will never know. Sacramento Kings had to be content with crowns only on jerseys and in the hearts of the fans, because other guys were officially crowned. Unfair, according to the entire progressive community, but no one would ever consider them a championship tip if they were blown away after what the judges had done on orders from above. The offended California team returned the following year to the Continental line and proved that last year wasn't an accident. Yes, undeserved. Yes, cult, but still defeat. There were forces for one more campaign, which certainly should have made the Kings, literally Kings, and it was Chris Webber who led this campaign. At first, in the second game of the second round against Dallas, Chris Webber fell and with tears in his eyes hugged his knee, in which the cartilage was torn. He laid face down on the inscription Sacramento near the front line and figured out that this was not until the end of the series. This was at least a year. The partners lost the home court, then made it to the 7th game, but losing the team leader in points, rebounds and assists was irreplaceable. This injury cost Chris his career. He got it when he showed the best basketball in his life. It was also the end of the great Sacramento. After that, they still existed by inertia, at a relatively high level, but there were no traces left of the brightest power forward in the league and the best team in the NBA. The following year, in the epilogue of his royal career, Webber, who had recovered from an injury around the start of the playoffs, would beat Nowitzki in the first round, but without any chance of losing to Garnett in the second. Chris will be traded to Philadelphia next season, and the Kings, after Adelman's departure in 2006, not only never made the playoffs, but also didn't reach the 40-win mark until the current 22-23 season. In his 2002-2004 prime, the Kings were eliminated 3 times after Game 7 of the series, and if Webber's game could be criticized, It was for one thing only. He did not want to take the ball in his hands in decisive moments. Webber officially took the title of Carmelo, Patrick Ewing, Ralph Sampson and Elvin Hayes, which can be described as a highly paid superstar who is good to the team with, except the last 3 minutes of an important game. We must pay tribute to Chris. After a not very successful start to his career with the timeout, quarrels with the coaches and wit in the getaways of Washington, he came not only to the love of the fans, the whole city, but also to the support of the entire world after the entire population of Sacramento sat on the bench with the bust of falls on Shaquille O'Neal, as well as after an injury a year later. He pulled himself together and made a new circle in his career, from love at the beginning of a new decade to another stage of hatred in its second half, this time from Philadelphia fans. The fact is that these guys in the middle of 2000s were losing ground under their feet from fear that Iverson would leave the team. The Sixers no longer dreamed of finals. A generational change began, and then some old man is out of topic, who eats up a huge contract and thinks only about money. This is not what we saw on TV from California broadcasts, and they didn't care about the testimony of the doctors, because Answer's 45 shots no longer helped even get into the playoffs. But the culprit was known. Again, a target on the back, execution and divorce. After 2 years in Philadelphia, he will be in his native Detroit. In the end, just to watch the performance of LeBron James' name in 2007 East Finals. And he will finish in his native Golden State, having spent 9 matches for them. Another drama played out with the inclusion of Chris Webber in the Hall of Fame. It would seem that a career record of 20.7 points, 9.8 rebounds and 4.2 assists clearly demonstrated what a uniquely versatile player C-Webb was. Players with a similar statistic lineup have historically been quickly included in the list of the most deserving. Under league rules, the first time a coach, player or functionary can be considered for inclusion in the Hall of Fame is 3 full seasons after the end of an active career. Chris Webber finished his in 2008, and since 2011 the NBA has almost indicatively ignored him with this honor. The first 6 years he didn't fall into the number of finalists at all. In years 17 and 18, he was broken off at the very final stage. Then he was headed by the inseparable Jason Kidd and Grant Hill, who retired in 2013, Ray Allen, who played till 2014, and even Steve Nash, who with his usual speed ended up in the Hall of Fame as soon as it became possible according to the rules. But he finished playing 7 years later than Webber. It's not that Chris was better than the dead players. The criteria are simply incomprehensible. Webber was one of the best big passers of his generation. For example, Tim Duncan, often referred to as the best power forward in the history, has not had a single season with 4 assists per game throughout his amazing career. Yes, of course, Webber's prime was dramatically shorter than Timmy's, but if we compare it with the same Grant Hill, whose career can be divided into 2 parts at all, before the fateful injury and after, then despite Hill's final basketball longevity, Webber in total scored, over the course of his career, corny more points, not to mention rebounds and block shots. In 2021, after 13 years of waiting, on the 10th try, Webber was finally given his due. He became a full member of the James Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. At the inclusion ceremony, he, as accepted, didn't hide his emotions. I always thought that I would be lucky to be a member of the Hall of Fame. It seemed to me that my track record speaks for itself, but no one is guaranteed a place there. Every year that I was not included in the list hurt me. So the most important thing was to try not to follow who was selected this time. For a long time, I tried to stay away from all this. I told myself, don't think about it, keep working and minding your own business. But when I was included this year, it was great. It's just unrealistic. I don't even know how else to explain. And I'm worried that all these feelings of mine will come out and become public the night it happens. But it's a hell of a feeling, mate. I thank God for this joy. Webber's legacy is not certain. This is not to say that C. Webb had lousy career. Out of 14 years, he played 6 at the highest level, participated in the All-Star Game 5 times, was selected to the All-NBA Top 5 in 2001, and the All-NBA second in 1999, 2002, and 3. Showed a 3-year peak with numbers of 25 plus 11 plus 5, and earned a considerable, for those times, $185 million. But the best years of his life were so bright and ended so dramatically for reasons beyond Chris' control that some rate him too highly. For example, Kenny Smith and Isaiah Thomas, in some program that was released after 2011, said that Webber, in spite of everything, is a more significant player than Dirk. Others, on the contrary, deal with the Webber rather mercilessly, remembering that he didn't have a very successful ending of important matches, and he didn't shoot so well, and these intricate passes of him often led to unnecessary turnovers. It is also hard to go against these arguments. Chris was never a clutcher, missed pucks of important free throws in playoff games, and at the end of his career, he couldn't get used to the role of an aged leader of the pack, playing from the throw. After retiring, Chris Webber became an interesting addition to the TNT and NBA TV team. Outspoken, likable, eloquent, capable of sounding white or black, too smart or totally stupid, depending on the surrounding group. This duality, plus memes about how his commentary skills can make his ears bleed, made C. Webb an extraordinary TV personality. But even after his career, all people think about is Chris Webber unfulfilled potential.